You know, the president talks big about defense. Oh, he's so tough. He went to a veterans hospital in January and told them, we're going to have the best medical system in the world. What he didn't tell you is the day before, he cut 164,000 veterans off their health care benefits. I'll be a president who will treat veterans well when they get home, as well as when they're in Iraq and Afghanistan. The president talks big about defense. He gave a $3 trillion tax cut, if you include the interest, to Ken Lay and the boys. But he didn't pay for Homeland Security for Iowa or for New York or California, for those first responders, for those firemen, for those police officers, for those public officials, public health officials. He gave $3 trillion tax cuts. He had enough money to do that, but he didn't have enough money to buy the enriched uranium stocks of the old Soviet Union weapons program, which we're entitled to buy under cooperative threat reduction. And if that stuff gets into terrorist hands, then we really are in jeopardy. He had enough money to give $3 trillion but to tax cuts to his friends who were writing them those $2,000 checks, but he didn't have enough money to inspect 90% of the cargo containers that come into this country every single day. Anything could be in those. This president talks tough about defense, but on his watch, North Korea is going to become a nuclear power. Our military did a great job in Afghanistan and in Iraq, but this president is losing the peace in both places. This president talks big about defense. But as they say in Texas, when it comes to defense, this president is all hat and no cattle. I want a different kind of America. I want the kind of America where we're respected again in the world, where we have high moral purpose and inspire admiration and not just fear. I want an America, Harry Truman's America. In 1948, Harry Truman put national health insurance in the Democratic Party platform. It's been 55 years. I think it's time Democrats stood up and we're Democrats again. This is what I want for America. We have a prison population of over 2 million people in this country. Now, any competent, qualified kindergarten teacher can tell you who the 5 kids are likely to go to prison in his or her class. So if we have some idea who's going to prison 15 or 20 years from now, why is it that we're not investing in small children and their families to stop using the most expensive and the least effective social service intervention that we do? So in our state, we do. We visit every mother in the hospital, whether she's the wealthiest or the poorest woman in the state. We ask if she'd like a home visit. 91% say yes. So we visit 91% of all our newborn kids within 2 or 3 weeks of their birth. Most of those families don't need any help, and they're happy to see a friendly face from the community. But the ones that do need help get child care, health care, job training, parenting skills, and programs in the case of single moms to keep the dads interested in the kids. 10 years later, our child abuse rate is down 43%. Child sex abuse is down 70%. And those kids are the kids that have a much better chance of going to college than they do of going to prison. We need to invest $100 a year per kid in early childhood between the ages of 0 and 3 if we want to do something 20 years from now about the prison population. And what we need more than anything in this country is to stop our politicians from thinking in 2 and 4 and 6-year terms and start them thinking in 20 and 100-year terms, because what we do today has an enormous impact on what happens in the future. Now, there are a lot of things we want to talk about, and I'm going to have a question and answer and all that, but I want to close by saying one thing, couple of things. First of all, it's time for a shameless political commercial. We have a toll-free line, 866-DEAN-4USA, and we're on the web at deanforamerica.com. If you look us up and you give us your email address, deanforamerica.com, send us your email address, we promise we will not spam you until the last 3 weeks of every quarter when we're trying to raise a lot of money. But that's how we build a network. If you send the stuff that we send to you, to your email network, there's probably 250 or maybe 300 people here. That's 30,000 people if you have 100 people on your list. That's how we're building this. We're going to beat this president not the way the people from Washington want to do it. They think the way to beat the president is to vote for the war, maybe vote for some of the tax cuts, and vote for No Child Left Behind. Any school board members here? You call it the No School Board Left Standing bill. Are there any teachers here? The teachers call it the No Behind Left bill. This is a huge unfunded mandate which does this. Texas has been in the bottom 5 states in the country for the last 50 years. Iowa has been in the top 5 states of the country for the last 50 years. What the president thinks is the way to help Iowa education is to make it more like Texas. And the most awful thing about this is the Democrats running for president all voted for that. We're not going to beat George Bush by trying to be like him. The way to beat George Bush is to stand up for what Democrats believe, stand up and be proud to be Democrats. And if you make me the Democratic nominee, I'll promise you one thing. If you make me the Democratic nominee, I'll make you proud to vote Democrat in this country again. The way we're going to beat George Bush is not to be like him. The way we're going to beat him is to bring new people into the party, to give the 50% of Americans who don't vote anymore a reason to vote, to stop saying there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. We're going to show them what the difference is, that we believe in our country, that we believe in jobs, that we believe in education, that we believe in a foreign policy that requires high moral purpose, not just a strong military. And, Mr. President, the flag is not the property of the Republican Party. It belongs to every single American. Tom Harkin told me to say that. Here's what we're doing in the campaign. We have 255,000 people on our email list. That's going to grow. Last quarter, we raised more money than anybody else. Well, that's very nice, but that's not the important thing. Last quarter, we had 83,000 people giving us money. Most of those people had never given money to a political candidate before, and the average gift was less than $80. That's how you beat the guy who can get as many $2,000 checks as you want. We were in San Diego, California about 2 months ago, and there are some people from San Diego here, so it's my pleasure to be able to say this in front of them. It was at 8 o'clock in the morning. You don't do that if you're in California. We had people from a huge number of Democrats. We had people from the Green Party. We had John McCain supporters. We had Ross Perot supporters. People are tired of not being told the truth by this administration. And if we are willing to stand up and be proud of who we are, I'm not going to agree with everybody here on every issue. But I'm going to tell you what I believe on the issues. And you're not going to leave here having asked me a question wondering what it is that I really said. And that's what we need in America. We need an America in which we're all included. We need an America where every single one of us has equal rights under the law, where we're all in this together. And that's what the Bush administration has hurt us the most. He's divided us by race, by gender, by income, even by religion. We can do better in this country if we stand up for what we believe, if we include anybody and everybody who's an American, and if we say boldly and proudly that we want our country back, that we want a country of truth, that we want a country where we're all in this together. We want a country of jobs again, Mr. President. We want a country of adequate health care like all the other industrialized countries have. And we want a country where when we go to any foreign country in the world, we can hold up our heads and be proud to be Americans. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's what I call a warm Iowa welcome, and I really appreciate it. And I am really glad to see all these Democrats out here in a fairly Republican part of the state. Although we've got some good Democrats, and we're going to have more before the next election. And I just want to say how proud I am of all the Democrats that contributed to Paul Sharmshore's victory in Council Bluffs last night. We didn't get them into Congress, but we have one more Democratic representative in the Iowa House of Representatives than we did 2 nights ago, and that's a great thing, and we're going to do better, and we're going to do more. Now, in the New England tradition, I am happy to take comments, questions, and rude remarks if necessary. And I think Greg's going to pass around the microphone, are you? So if you raise your hand, Representative Stevens will get to you with a mic.
Governor, I'd like to remind you that we did elect a Democrat in the last presidential election. Have you heard anything, or did you catch him on C-SPAN today in the wonderful speech he gave?
Al Gore? Al Gore gave a great speech today. We should be very... I know you're not aware of it because you may not have... I haven't seen it. I saw the written copy. Al Gore would have made a great president, and he said what needs to be said for the Democratic Party, and we should be very proud. You should get the text of his speech because he hit on all the themes, and he showed why he would have been a much better president than the guy we got there now. Thank you. Whoops, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pointed you out, but... Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
In the Democratic debates last week, Dennis Kucinich gave a very good answer about the WTO and his stance on the WTO, and he kind of challenged all the candidates that were on stage to do the same. Can you kind of respond to that?
Sure. I'll be happy to. Let me respond to one other thing that Dennis said. Dennis is a good guy, but he said that I approved of increasing the Social Security age to 70. That is not so. I do not approve of increasing the retirement age. If we want to fix Social Security, we ought to do it by uncapping the amount of income. A CEO who makes $45 million a year pays the same Social Security tax as somebody who makes $85,000 a year. That's ridiculous. The President gave all that money away to that CEO. We ought to at least have them pay their fair share of Social Security. So we'll get that one off the table right now. Secondly, the WTO. What we need to do with our trade agreements is this, and this is a complicated answer. First, we have to understand why we have trade. The purpose of trade ought not to be to enrich multinational corporations. The purpose of trade is national defense. If you create middle-class countries who believe in democracy, where women fully participate in the government, you've created a country that doesn't go to war with other countries and that does not harbor groups like Al-Qaeda. Now, let's look at what we've done with the WTO and NAFTA. First of all, NAFTA was great for my state. I'm right against the Canadian border. We quadrupled our trade with Canada and we created jobs. NAFTA has not been great for the Midwest in this country because this is where all the industrial jobs were, and a great many of them have gone elsewhere. Here's what needs to happen. Trade is a good thing, not a bad thing, first. Secondly, the rules for trade are unfair. So far, what we've done with trade is mainly export a large number of industrial jobs, and the ownership pattern of those jobs is exactly the same as the ownership pattern was of industries in this country about 120 years ago, before the labor movement. Now, what has made this country the strongest country in the world? It's because we have the biggest middle class in the world. And what created the biggest middle class in the world? The trade union movement allowed... Thank you. The trade union movement allowed people who worked in factories and worked in mines and worked now in schools or nursing homes to maintain a middle class lifestyle, to achieve a lifestyle where they thought that their kids would do better than they did. Middle class is patriotic. They vote. They serve in the armed forces. They believe the system works for them. So what needs to happen in these other countries that we're doing trading with? If we're going to do trade with Mexico or China or Brazil, now Brazil has a strong trade union movement, but if we're going to trade with these countries, they need to have the same labor standards that we have in the United States of America. No child labor, right to organize, time and a half for overtime, occupational safety and health inspections. And if they don't, I don't feel obligated to re-import their products because we're not subsidizing the creation in the best interest of the United States of a middle-class country elsewhere. So if it's okay for Maytag to move its plant from Galesburg to Mexico, then it has to be okay for the machinists to go down and organize that plant. And if it's not, we're under no obligation